Okay, so good day, everyone, and a warm welcome to the first webinar of our exciting three-part series leading up to the annual Caribbean Strategy Summit. I'm honored to be here with you as the Managing Director of Strategy Plus Consulting, the esteemed host of this summit. Strategy Plus Consulting is a global technical partner of the Balanced Scorecard Institute based in the Caribbean. And today marks the beginning of a journey that will span 3 insightful webinars, each designed to enrich your understanding, spark innovative ideas, and prepare you for the grandeur of the summit itself next month. We are thrilled to welcome participants not only from the Caribbean, but also from international locations today, showcasing the vast network and influence of our summit and the reach of our partners, the Balanced Scorecard Institute. During this webinar, we expect to dive deep into strategic concepts that will shape the future of business and governance in the Caribbean and beyond. And at the end of today's presentation, we'll share some exciting details about the summit that you won't want to miss, so stay on. Now, our presenter today is Joe DiCarlo. Joe is the Senior Vice President as well as a Senior Consulting Associate who has 40 plus years of extensive experience in business structuring, strategy formulation, and implementation, including balanced scorecard use, of course, change management, and design and execution of innovative operational business models, solutions in the private and public sectors and not-for-profit sectors, with first-line and executive C-suite level management positions. Joe's experiences include profit and loss responsibilities, IT, whether it's hardware, software, consulting, education, publishing with IBM Corporation, university senior management and instructor at the Milwaukee School of Engineering, an alumnus of the inaugural Executive in Residence program for technology startups at the Plug and Play Technology Incubator in Sunnyvale, California. And of course, senior consultant and instructor with the Balanced Scorecard Institute. Joe is also certified by the Strategy Management Group, for which the Balanced Scorecard Institute forms a part of, and the George Washington University Center for Excellence in Public Leadership, a part of the College of Professional Studies, as a part and certified with the Balanced Scorecard Master Professional and Project Manager Master Professional, as well as a certified effective facilitator through the Leadership Strategies Institute. His assignments and projects span internationally, including North America, Mexico, Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana, Barbados, Saudi Arabia, and many more. Joe has an MBA in technology management from the University of Phoenix and is a doctoral candidate at the University of Phoenix as well. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to hand over the next segment to Joe, Vice President at the Balanced Scorecard Institute. Joe brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, and I'm confident that his insights will significantly enrich our discourse today. Joe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nichelle. Welcome everyone from around the world. It's a pleasure to be here and always exciting to work with the Caribbean Strategy Summit every year in some capacity. And I'm just giving this slide. It'll be in the deck that you get. So there's contact information in there. And just to emphasize some things that Nichelle talked about over the course of these. She was being nice at 40 years plus, but it's 52 years real. And the key element about this particular talk about leadership and leadership transformation that has to go on is kind of driven by that work-life examples that's there with IBM Corporation, because I started in 1985. And if you think back, if you're old enough to think back, that's when the first PCs came out. So that's quite a ways back. And since that time, and I've been with the Institute, SMG, and BSI now for over 12, 13 years. And I've topped out at 105 client consulting engagements, many of them repeat engagements. So the things we're going to cover today in regard to leadership are direct experiences from IBM and also from the Strategy Management Group and the BSI. Just a reminder, you should see a Q&A button on your lower tray and use that to post any questions. I will say during this talk, we have one energetic person sent a early question, so I will be pausing when we get to the content that I think helps answer that question going through. And then we'll hold the others until the very end to handle one at a time. And if we don't get through all of them, Nichelle always sends them to me, and then I send you back answers to those questions if you include your email address in the questions. So let's talk first about this leadership imperative. Now, in the positions I've been in with IBM and with the Institute and that 105 engagements of working with a lot of leaders and from all industry sectors, by the way. In fact, we're going to be showing an example here of an industry sector that's nonprofit. They're a pure nonprofit organization, and they did some tremendous things in regards to leadership, especially around innovation and especially around getting teams and up and working in a particular area. But this whole leadership imperative has roots or foundations in the brown and the black interior around inside those blue ones that have served organizations well over the years. There's no questions about it. And leadership, I mean, just has many dimensions to it. Anyone who is a CEO or a president or a board member or a department head usually has to have all these characteristics of leadership, but that's changing now. And a lot of it has to do with technology, and there's no question about it. And that's why right at the top of the list around the brown is the aggressive technology adoption and integration. You cannot hide from that anymore. And I think if there's anyone on this call, probably have seen all of the discussion about AI coming out, and we're back into a realm where the technology is driving the change aggressively. There's no question about it. But there has to be some better emphasis on foresight, adaptability, and empowerment. A lot of organizations are very still much hierarchical. They haven't adopted a culture of getting empowering teams to make decisions and make progress on things that need to be done for the organization. Of course, the leadership always has to set the tone of where we want the organization to go. But the times are changing now, again, driven by a lot of the technology, to let go and let those teams be empowered to make the decisions that they need to make. So, down at the bottom, that's why I emphasize leaders must shift from control to enablement. You've got to enable those teams and individuals down lower, maybe whole departments. Sure, you're giving them goals and objectives, performance measures to make, outcomes to achieve, and those types of things. But you got to turn over the reins, as I call it, to more people and just be more aggressive in what they can do and in the reporting process. Total organization strategy alignment. In this day and age, with what's happening with technology, the need for foresight, and also is you've got to get that organizational strategy from the corporate level or the organization-wide level aligned or cascaded down to the departments and the individuals or teams. You cannot just have that big, shiny, flashy organization-wide strategy that you talk about and not turn those things down to the departments and individuals. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't state the obvious. On the bottom blue line, we're living in a very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous time. A lot of it right now is disrupted by technology. There's no question about it. I'm staying away from the political stuff because at the end of the day, the business has to survive no matter what the politics are. That's just common sense. And again, these all apply to for-profit, nonprofit, as well as government or organizations going forward. Now, as it turns out, when I look back at my experiences and what experiences I've had with the Strategy Management Group and the Balanced Scorecard Institute, and these are worldwide. You saw the listing that Nichelle went through on that bio slide. it comes down to these three imperatives, that are these three pillars that leaders must make adjustments to in what they're doing in that annual retreat, how they approach planning, how they approach empowering, how they can be agile in decision making, and that type of thing. And the first thing is strategic planning. They have to start working foresight and flexibility in. Now, I'm going to show you an example of foresight that we use at the Institute when I work with the top level organization to get the organization wide strategy built. We take time to go through the exercise that I'm going to show you here. And then on the empowering and innovation, especially on the innovation side, this is an example of how this nonprofit organization empowered teams, not only in Canada where they were located, but predominantly in the Africa region that they were working on to solve a really tough problem. And then, of course, the agile and strategic make the speed and empowerment. We're going to show you a new system that we've been starting to roll out that combines pre-planning, strategic planning, and then strategic execution. Because for too many times, a lot of organizations will create strategies and they look good, they measure against them, but doesn't seem to deliver what it was supposed to. And that's where the strategy execution part comes in. Now, so the first pillar on planning, leading with foresight and flexibility has these five components, but we're going to talk, the bold ones talks about some examples that are coming up that I'll show you. First, you have to embed scenario planning or dynamic forecasting and get into systems thinking as opposed to that hierarchical structure that you've been living under for some time. You have to constantly beat the drum about a shared vision for profit-making organizations. Why is it vision for profit-making? Because profit-making organizations usually have that big visionary goal that they're looking for, because profit-making organizations are in the business of doing what? Making money. They're not mission-driven like the government one in number 3. Mission-driven organizations or nonprofit organizations are driven by a different modus process to get their services out to the, in this case, government, the citizens, and in this case, the users of the nonprofit. I like to say the non-government and nonprofit are always trying to improve quality of life. End of story. But the for-profit, it's always about making the money. They have to align to short-term actions, so they got to have a way to feed back. And we're going to cover that with what we call the strategy execution cadence here a little later, that allows you to create your strategies at all levels, organization-wide, department, and teams and individuals, but reactivate those and review those on a regular basis going forward. And then the last thing is the systems thinking. Now, systems thinking, with that little graphic that's down there, I mean, everybody can see the visual reactive things that you have to take a look at. This is all above the waterline of an iceberg. You see the events, you're in the middle of the events, and you have to think about, and you're being pushed and pulled by the trends and patterns that are out there in today. In the invisible side of the proactive, what you need to do, and what this particular presentation and with that new system that we put out, it's going to let you take a look at what the mental models are so that you get regenerative ideas. You're going to redesign through structures, and you're also going to reframe your systems so that they are more agile and producing that you need going forward. So let's take a look at the first thing, which is the foresight or the strategic scenario planning. Well, we've been delivering with those corporate executives that to help design the top level organization-wide strategy is a very simple derivative of something called scenario planning. There's hundreds of books out on Amazon. You can look at all the papers online, and you're going to see some very detailed things that drive over a long period of time to do foresight and do scenario planning. Our goal here is during the build process of the strategy for the organization-wide scorecard is to just get the execs thinking about 3 things. First, we start with a question. And in this case, this client, the question was, what will the customer buyer landscape look like in 3 to 5 years? This was one that was done in 2017. And then we asked them to what assumptions can they realistically make about answering that question. And you can see here they listed 4. Now, where the real information and work comes from is the next step is to say, what can you say about each assumption that's certain, definitely certain? And what can you say about each assumption that's uncertain? You don't quite know, and you don't have any intelligence gathered yet, but something just says we're uncertain about this. Now, remember, this one was done. This was a client that was a medical equipment and supplies manufacturer worldwide, and it was done in 2017. And at the end of the day, that one that was in red was put down by these executives. 2017, remember, worldwide. One of them or 2 of them put in uncontainable disease that will drive demand and supply chain disruption. Well, 2017, guess what was that was 2 years, roughly 2 years before what? COVID. And in this particular manufacturer's case, in the US, the government stepped in when the pandemic was totally out of control, and they were short on one thing that became very clear with regards to the pandemic was they didn't have enough ventilators. They came to this company, and the government had already reached out to another company and said, you guys need to collaborate and do just in time ventilator manufacturing, literally just in time. And they worked for about less than a month, the 2 together. And in very quick order, they were able to solve that problem of getting enough ventilators out to the hospitals. It was a problem for a while, but it got contained very quickly. And when I checked back with the executives about this, they said, "Oh yeah, everybody points right back to that certainty that was." And we started looking at it early. As soon as you left, we knew things were getting different, getting uncontainable across the globe because they are an international company. So this is the kind of thing that leaders are going to have to process and put in play almost every year with their strategies going forward. And by the way, we do this kind of activity at the organization-wide strategy as well as the departmental side, because departments have these same assumptions, certainties, and uncertainties. This is the new system, or the balanced strategic planning and strategy execution system that we're rolling out. It's a derivative of some processes we've had before, but this contains all of them and embellishes in some of the areas. The one that's the most important here that we will cover in more detail during the conference is that bar across the bottom, that flow bar across the bottom that says ongoing, cascading, and alignment. This is just what needs to be put in place for the organization-wide strategy. And it's tackling what pre-planning activities, strategic planning, and strategic execution. So this starts getting strategy and execution into the systems thinking across the organization. It's very detailed, but at the end of the day, when our clients and early clients, I've got one current one that's in the Caribbean that's using this. Very short order, they will have come all the way across with what they need to go forward. Now, pillar 2 is innovation. So you got to empower experimentation, creative problem solving. So what does it mean today? Well, first of all, you got to foster a culture of experimentation and learning. If your organization is not doing experimentation and learning, you're already behind the curve. And I'm going to show you something in more detail that I learned back in the late 90s when I was working for IBM that is very much in vogue today based on some recent papers that have been turned out. They have to encourage cross-functional collaboration. If you don't have this, or if you have silos in your organization, this is going to be an inhibitor. So this aspect needs to get those silo walls taken down. You have to start thinking about innovating with partners. Most organizations, with the pace of technology and change, they cannot do it all their own. They may have a specific part of a market that they're tops in, but to expand it, they got to get external relationships going. When you start moving from a very static area in regards to innovation, you got to set the psychology safety about where failure has got to be built into the learning and experiences. Most organizations want to do innovation, but for whatever reason, when the first failure comes, they'll just throw it right out the window and say it didn't work. You're going to do iterative versions of some of the things you're doing so you can see where the failure might be and how you can quickly adjust it. You're going to create cross-functional innovation teams. You'll break up the total project into different groups and let them come together with their ideas going forward. And then you're going to encourage open innovation ecosystems and collaborate with startups or academics. And the one we're going to look at was a collaboration with academics. And just to give you a hint about what we're going to see, it involves 3D printing and scanning, reducing the need for technical specialists, increasing the quality of prosthetics, and speeding up the process to get the prosthetics designed out into the clients or the patients that need it. This was a client of the institutes that was named at that time was Christian Blind Mission, has since rebranded to Hope and Healing International. And this was a copy of their strategy map in 2021. And I've gone through, and when we were helping them design their organization-wide strategy, there were 3 objectives in there that led them very easily to do an innovation type process with, in this case, the University of Toronto. They're located outside of Toronto, Canada. The first thing was get comfortable with improving your technology and systems. Second was improving the strategic partnerships. And in this case, this thing had major improved impact based on what was happening. There was the problem that CBM Canada was trying to tackle. 800 million people in a world caught in the poverty and disability cycle. This was predominantly looking at the disability cycle and reaching more people in a profound way. What the solution was, whenever they had, and if any of you have traveled in geographic areas of the world where club feet and bones in different structure, missing some parts of the bone or limb, not being able to get around and that type of thing was fundamentally disabilities, they were tackling that problem with, until this solution came along, the typical way, which was plaster of Paris prosthetics. While that training technical people to do those prosthetics the first time that's usable is a very long and laborious process. Also, there's a shortage of technicians to do that. Their solution was we'll scan the patient's problems, their limbs, like it does in the middle section. We'll take a photograph of that from many angles. We'll feed that back to the 3D printing. We'll gen up the part for the leg, as you can see on the third, and we do that. And in their first tries, we're getting those fits to be done with minor modifications 96% of the time. Big change in speed, big change in capabilities. And this is still a very big part of Hope and Healing International. They also go back to their blind mission roots, and they're working on blind as well. But this is a perfect example on how a nonprofit can partner with a university and using readily available gear that's out there at this time with 3D printing and scanning. In fact, as I think back to 2021, this 3D printing was just coming out. It was just, not as prevalent as it is today. This ties back directly to something that I was exposed to in 1999 from IBM when this book came out called The Alchemy of Growth, because of course, all organizations want to grow in some area. And we retrofitted that process to innovation, which applies for pillar number 2. And this is still in the, let's say, the discussion and the measuring and the looking at organizations today. The first one, if you're Horizon 1, and this is the government and nonprofit first, their y-axis is program and service reach and effectiveness through innovation. Of course, there's a time scale for the X. Or Horizon 1, these are core. What do you do today? What is your core business? What is your core products? What are your core services? Those types of things. Horizon 2 is you want to improve the cost effectiveness and the existing products and services. And Horizon 3 is you want to be transformative and innovation problems and new solutions. And then eventually those route right back down to Tier 1 or the Horizon 1. The key thing is that a lot of organizations, they look at this and they say, well, we don't play in that. And they do. Because if you look at anything in Horizon 1 that you can make a change to the efficiency and the quality and the effectiveness, many times driven by technology, you've just hardened even more that Horizon 1 core, which might allow you to start experimentation with something at Horizon 2, which is more cost effectiveness to the existing. Now, on the profit side world, it gets very explicit. Of course, the y-axis there changes to profits performance. Because if they make these changes at Horizon 1, they're going to extend and defend their core, but they'll do some existing operations and changes. Same thing with emerging businesses. They'll be adjacent to that innovation. And then eventually they're going to be out on what I call the fringe and looking at something that really is brand new, untested technology, but they're willing to take a look at it in some form, maybe applying that psychology of, not making it, but doing small bites to get it to the final product that they're looking at. So this is still playing, and surprisingly, remember, this was 1999. Because I have a news feed from McKinsey and Company, the 3 pathways to profitable growth. And when you look at this article, it outlines exactly what I just showed in the last 2 slides for Horizon 1, Horizon 2, and Horizon 3. And occasionally in the news feeds like MSNBC, Bloomberg, you'll hear the commentators make comments about, oh, that's a Horizon 2 company. That still is embedded in the thought and the execution process today. Now, when we talk about decision 3, about making decisions and speed and empowerment, a couple of things come to mind. First of all, as you heard me say before, decentralized decision making with frontline empowered teams with autonomy. That is fundamental to changing the speed of what needs to be done and leadership has to deal with. Next thing is you got to get your systems to provide you real-time data as much as possible, and so that you can make adjustments. And the last thing we're going to see in this section is that strategy execution cadence. And then finally, the one example we're going to look at is this methodology, agile. If those of you who are project managers, you know that agile methodology well, but you can apply it to things like objective key results. You can SMART goals, strategic objective measurements, and to create frameworks for leadership engagement and the decision making. And one of the things that came back from a lot of use that we used to use in IBM, and I have used it occasionally with some clients, is going all the way back to Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats to get some ideas moving out quickly. And you can see the factors there are: you collect the facts, you list the benefits, you get everybody's feelings, you inject the creativity, you do some analysis, and yes, you do look at what are the downside things. But the interesting thing I found is something I saw in one of the quotes on Thinking Hats, was that by the end of the process, there's usually no questions as to what ought to be done, because you hit that from these different angles coming into what you were trying to solve or create very quickly. This is that strategy execution cadence, which picks up keeping the organization at all levels. Tier 1 is organization-wide strategy. Tier 2 is departmental strategy, and tier 3 are teams and individuals. You have to put this cadence in effect throughout the entire year. So, of course, you're looking at all the projects, programs, projects, and initiatives, and are they on track and on budget? When you do anything related to strategy, strategy really only cares about, are you on time and on budget on those projects? And I know without asking the question, if I could have you raise your hand or something here, I always do this little poll with executives and departments that how good are you at on time and on budget? And I see a lot of people starting to close their eyes. It's like, okay, we know that's a dent in our armor here, but we need to get it under control. Because why? It costs resources, time, money, and people. The second thing is you're going to be constantly reviewing those strategies at the organization wide and the departments 3 times a year, 2 times a year, 3 times a year for 3 quarters. And then over there in the fourth quarter, you're going to do a deep dive to see what's got to change for the next fiscal year. In the meantime, the tier 3s are the individuals and teams. Those department heads, supervisors, or team leaders have created personal objectives, OKRs, SMART goals, whatever, for each of those teams or individuals to complete, and they've got to stay on track with what they were supposed to be delivering. So I like to say that the leadership is, we saw thinking hats. This is another hat that usually gets delegated down to the strategy management office to make sure that all this data is collected, make sure it's all analyzed and brought forth for those quarterly meetings that are in the yellow gear, the monthly meetings for the red gear, and then, of course, working with them to create a review of the strategy and everything going forward. We've also outlined and we just enhanced our strategic management maturity assessment, which hits 8 dimensions of what can be done to compare yourself to best practices. But more importantly, is the organization ready to act in a more strategy outline and activity? A lot of organizations are very surprised by what the executives have to say here and what the downstream people in the organizations have to say here. This is our flagship, over 20 years old, 9-step to success to build a strategy, both at organization-wide and at tier 2 or the departments, but it works. And we've made minor tweaks to some of the things inside those particular sectors, but this 9-step process has stood the test of time since 1997. We just recently recast how we create key performance indicators through the MPRA framework, and it puts it in a very orderly fashion about what needs to be done against objectives that are created at the organization-wide and at the department-wide. And then we've created, this is new, it's an strategy execution improvement accelerator. So we pick up that right-hand side of that system for the strategy execution, and it takes you through a series of steps that you need to do. You look at this on an annual basis because each of these things, every one of these things, because of the nature of the strategy execution cadence and the pre-planning and planning and design and the execution is all done on an annual basis. And that's why I very candidly tell organizations that are going to be immediately cascading their organization-wide strategy down to their departments, you need to get technology in to help you do that, because you can't run organizations of any size, of any nature, of any size, only the ultra small with Excel spreadsheets. It just doesn't work very well. And last but not least, what happens is through taking account what's going on with the leaders and what they have to change in their DNA, is they have to start being more visionary than they are now. There's all those outside factors are coming in to hit the organization, hit the company, hit the government agency, etc. So they have to craft compelling narratives about where they want to see the organization go. The leader does. They have to be adaptive, embrace change, and pivot quickly to external shifts. You got to be more collaborative and remove barriers and build networks to do that. And you also have to be more empowering. Get those teams of individuals more handling the outcomes that they're working for. And of course, digitally fluent is critical. Technology, not just as a tool, but as a core strategic asset. And what is driving that? And we mentioned that earlier. It's all about artificial intelligence. And I can categorically tell you from my time when I joined IBM in 85, starting about 87, I was appointed as a systems engineer for IBM to handle the Midwest, the entire set of states in the Midwest of the US, in something called the integrated reasoning shell and the expert systems and expert knowledge systems. Now, you would think central part of the U.S., not very technical, a lot of farmers, that kind of business. As it turns out, they were some of the first adopters of the integrated reasoning shell and the expert systems capabilities. In fact, in one year, we actually had better performance than Wall Street, which should have been way above everything else. And that's exactly what's transpiring now. Now, the first question I usually get is why didn't that continue? Because what happened was in early 90s, IBM stopped doing our AI. And that's also, by the way, when they sold the PC business, they couldn't make money at the PC business. Of course, they're a profit-making organization. But the thing that happened with the AI was we were always constrained by two pieces of technology that today are not constrained. First was the storage of massive amounts of data. If any of you were in that era in the early 90s, you remember it was like floppy disks, hard drives that we thought were great when it was 10 gig or 10 meg, and storage, bigger storage if you were in an organization's mainframe for an organization, but not that much more because the technology hadn't evolved yet. The second thing that was restraining AI at that point was the processor speeds. I mean, they were changing. Moore's law was in play, but it wasn't happening fast enough. I could go through and do knowledge extraction from a subject matter expert, get the system making the same decisions she or he outlined for me to the tune of about 95, 96% of the same that the human would do it. But to go from 96, 97, I had to create more data, get more data coming in. Well, we didn't have a lot of places to store it. And you know now what you hear with AI is what are the two biggest things they consume? Huge amounts of data and huge amounts of electricity. I mean, they have to power all of this business. And you know the story about the NVIDIA chips and that type of thing that are out there going on. So the chip processing is picked up and is keeping pace, but it's also changing again rapidly. So what's happening now in my estimation and review, is the same thing back in the late 80s, early 90s, except now it's 1,000 times more accelerated because the technology is building on itself from one generation to another, which might only be 1 or 2 or 3 months long. And then there's another generation that comes out for 4, 5, and 6 going forward. So these DNA elements is what the new leadership is going to have to deal with going forward. So the conclusions are you got to redefining is not optional. I mean, you have to redefine leadership in your organization. That's just going to be impacted more and more every year that goes by. You got to embrace new tools and think that you're going to have a tool for a while. It's going to solve a problem that we've got, but we may have to change it again in 12, 15, 18 months. Mindsets. You got to get everybody into empowerment, owning what they're doing and be held accountable for it, and then set the organization structures in place and just getting empowerment involved in what you want to do going forward. So we're going to go into the Q&A session now, but I've got one of your attendees sent an early question to us that we picked up right away, and let me read it to you here. How do we engage leaders to recognize the different styles and skill sets required to accommodate not only a changing internal culture and organizational dynamics, but also the global environment with more demands for action-oriented strategic planning? Very insightful question. And you'll notice if you follow what I was saying, that question cuts across just about every one of the pillars of the three in some aspect that we were talking about, and bits of like the one with the 3D printing, the one with the strategy execution cadence, the one with the planning, building strategy and execution cadence, because inside of there's all kinds of activities that are going on to make sure that this is reviewed on an ongoing basis all the time. It's kind of like I use the analogy that you're in an airplane and you're the pilot. And one of the things, if any of you are private pilots, your instructor will tell you, keep your eyes on the horizon. Don't get focused on what's on that instrument panel. You just glance at that. You always focus on that horizon because you, as the pilot, needs to see what's coming at you in as much as you can, not direct, but in the peripheral vision as well. That is what those elements that I covered in those pillars and those examples does if leadership bears into it and wants to watch over the horizon and react before things come in and have a hit on the organization. The one thing, the analogy I like to use when I'm working in the Caribbean is that if you're in a profit-making organization, you don't want to be in the wake of the other guy in front of you that you're trying to compete with. You want to create the wake for that other competitor to have you follow behind you. So I hope that answers the question. And if you're at the summit, anyone on this webinar is at the summit, I'll be very happy to talk more. Plus, we're also going to show the second and third layers of that tier one that we showed earlier. Were there any questions, Nichelle?
Yes, we do have a few of them now coming in. Thank you so much again for your presentation, Joe. A lot of persons are saying it was excellent. Well done. So we have, let's see, Kelly. This is so inspirational. Thank you. But her question is, what advice do you have for nonprofits that are hesitant to change or have had a top-down culture for a long time? She's on the executive leadership team, but comes from a very different experience of working in a very dynamic, agile environment, hoping that you can help.
Very good question. I had the fortunate capabilities when I finished up engineering and business school at the bachelor. I wound up working for that university, which was nonprofit, totally opposite to what we were trained going through the engineering courses, because everything was in Milwaukee, it was heavy industry. You know, those are all for-profit organizations. But I got into the middle of that university and found out for a university that was teaching engineering, and a lot of nonprofits I work with, you just got to get leadership to sit down and say, at the beginning of every year, they didn't have that strategy execution cadence then. This is going way back into the 70s. The first thing you got to do is get upper management to sit down in those sessions and say, what do we need to do different to serve the people that we provide services for from a nonprofit, and also to create elements and products and services that may have to change because of what the capabilities of delivering them are. So I'm going right back to the Horizon 1, 2, and 3. I mean, most nonprofits work well on a Horizon 1, but they get a little timid about moving to Horizon 2 because there's risk. Well, you can assess the risk. You just need to get the groups to sit down and start talking about it. That's where I like the reference of the six hats, because that kind of thing can drive. You can have an idea and clearly ferret it out, and you'll see all sides of that particular, and then you can make a decision as to what you want to go. That would be my best recommendation on that. Good question.
Okay, so we may have room for one or two more. We have from Thana, could you elaborate on what it means for an individual or organization to leverage technology as a core strategic asset, moving beyond simply using it as a tool for specific tasks? And what are some concrete examples of this type of integration, if you do have?
Sure. First of all, a lot of that reply to that question is going to be technology driven, because as you can see what's happening in the worldwide marketplace today, you can see what the OpenAI, and I'm talking about the Gammas, the Claudes, the ChatGPT, those kinds of things, and agent AI, as well as going through their own language models, that type of thing. Technology is going to drive that, and you're going to pick off bite-sized chunks of processes and delivery capabilities and maybe new product development that level of AI is very well suited to do to serve public customer and constituents requirements. Now, the biggest downside right now is, and as I mentioned earlier, this AI explosion that's going on is not showing any signs of slowing down. It's actually accelerating. I attend a once a month briefing session on AI for project management. And those two individuals that deliver this, they are always talking about this just came in new, this came in new, this came in new. And it's focused obviously on AI affecting project management. But the thing that's always there is every month that acceleration is always going up. So what comes to the point of executives is you have to decide where you want to play with the expectation that what you develop and turn out, if it does help the organization, which you shouldn't be playing in AI if it doesn't. And second of all, what is it that we want to do different? And can the current AI help us? And how will we tackle and back in the day before AIs, it was what feature functions do we need to add on to that AI will pick up? So consequently, it's get everybody sitting down. I would suggest you use the thinking hats to look at all sides of the issue. Start slow and get something accomplished that it could be helping the entire organization. And it may seem like it's too low level, but if you get a productivity gain of 20 to 25%, you can start moving those people into other things that they need to do that require still deep thinking from a human side going forward. I hope that helps.
Yes, that was excellent. And all of the participants who responded to said thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. So I think we'll close off here, Joe. Guys, feel free to email Strategy Plus Consulting about any questions that you may have, or you can respond to the address that you received your webinar invites for, just querying anything that you did not get answered in this session. And so I'll just use the opportunity to briefly run through some highlights and details for our upcoming summit. Thank you again so much, Joe. And we're looking forward to seeing you at the summit as well next month.
Thank you, Nichelle, and thank you, attendees. I hope to see some of you at the summit.
Okay. So our theme for the summit this year is Charting New Horizons, Strategic Innovation for a Resilient Caribbean. And so last year's focus was on strategy and strategic execution. The year before that was on strategic performance management. And so the year before that, even in 2022, was on strategic planning. So we're making a full circle back around again by public demand to focus again on strategic planning and the whole process of the management and so forth. So this year, we are continuing our tour. This year, we're doing the St. Kitts at the St. Kitts Marriott. Last year, we did Royalton, St. Lucia. Next year, let's see what comes, right? One step at a time. So we have two events. It's a 2-day summit. Event one is the symposium or conference on June 19th. And then on June 20th, the Friday, is the 1-day strategic planning essentials course. And so if you've been following us, you would have seen this information on our landing page on the Strategy Plus Consulting event landing page. These are just some of our major collaborators and partners. the Strategy Management Group, of course, and the Balanced Scorecard Institute, as well as the Syndicats HR Professional Association. So we always try to partner with our local in-market teams. And so I introduced myself earlier as the MD and Principal Consultant of Strategy Plus Consulting, but I'm also the founder and host of the summit and the founder and host of the Strategy Association for the Caribbean. Now for day one, hosted at Marriott, I mean, both days will be hosted at Marriott. We will be going through some strategic planning insights, as I said. Normally the format, we do 3 expert BSI lectures on strategy. Then we intertwine that with symposium panels showcasing regional panelists from all of the different Caribbean islands. And so we aim for 9 to 12 industry panelists, whether it's executives or industry leaders, or even strategists and strategic planners. We try to get a good mix, both for corporate and for government. And we give attendees or participants the opportunity to ask questions. And so it's very interactive. If you visit our 2024 summit, there are some highlights on the page there. There are the webinars from last year. If you want more information, there are pictures and videos and whatnot, so you can see the interaction. So our international speakers usually hail from the Strategy Management Group. So some of these speakers showcased here on our slide have spoken before or will be speaking at this year, and we try to change them around. We use them for webinars. Sometimes we have other consultants that facilitate client engagements and whatnot with Strategy Plus, as well as the Balanced Scorecard Institute. So look out for Joe and his colleagues. So last year, panelists just to whet the appetite for 2024, as we said, hailed from various different islands, as it's a Caribbean Strategy Summit. And while we had international participants, our panels were largely regionals, okay? Hailing from different industries. For 2023, we had a few as well, some from Syndicats, from Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and as I said, different industries, oil and gas, banking, retail, quite a wide array. So it's not a specific industry that we marketing or targeting. And again, remember, strategy is everybody's business. It's not an HR thing. It's not a strategy office thing. It's not the C-suite thing. Strategy is everybody's business, I like to say. And so we welcome executives, senior professionals, senior managers, junior managers from across the organization. They can all benefit. I'm sure those of you who are on who may not be at the C-suite level just yet, this is something that would really push you to the next level if you're interested in moving up in the organization. So while persons are very technically sound, you know, the feedback some of you may get is you're not strategic. And so how do we do that? And that's our impetus in bringing the summit to you. Okay, so for day 2, there's a strategic planning course. And normally it's a 1-day, very interactive. It's a smaller group, of course, usually cater for about 40. And we will have Joe continue with us on day 2, along with myself, to facilitate that particular program. We'll be using the 9 Steps to Success proprietary methodology or framework from the Balanced Scorecard Institute. Very tried and proven. I myself has been using this for the last 10 to 15 years. And it really gives you that very focused, logical framework, taking you from vision and mission all the way through to your strategic initiatives and building out your action plan. So we look forward to that with Joe. And so these are some things, some objectives that you can expect. Learn how to make strategy happen. The course exposes managers, leaders, analysts to the process of taking an existing strategic plan or even building one and bringing it to the stage of implementation. So there'll be some highlights and some oversight there, okay? Who should attend? As I mentioned, all levels throughout the organization and basically across all functions. You're welcome, and the information is invaluable. Invaluable in terms of your performance management and aligning your department or unit strategy to the overarching or overall strategy of your particular organization, and ensuring that the goals can be met, and making sure that you get a seat at that strategy table and to be able to keep it and add value. Just some of our clients and participants across the Caribbean. Some of them are native to St. Kitts market as well, like the National Bank and the TC Group. And then some others you may know from wherever you're hailing, whether it's Spectrum Management Authority in Jamaica or Toyota here in Trinidad, Tadco in Tobago. We have a wide cross section. So we're inviting you to register now. It's 1 month away. And so we'll continue to host our webinars. There's a 3-part series, as we mentioned. This is the first. The second is going to be on May 28th, and the last one, June 11th, which is roughly a week before the actual summit. Okay, so we look forward to seeing you there. If you have questions, queries, concerns, check out our landing page on the website. Feel free to contact us at the number listed here or our email address. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to seeing you at our next webinar and the summit. Thank you.